Hello there and welcome to episode 21. And guess what? We're live at the NEC in Birmingham for the Classic Motor Show. We'll be reporting from all over the show, tyre kicking and talking cars. Also coming up in this episode, See It, Want It. It's always been a bit of a Marmite car, but is it finally time to say yes to the Jaguar XJS? Plus, let's get hammered with auction prices all over the shop. Just what is selling and what's stalling? All that, plus your comments, corrections, and hopefully not too much heckling. We're here, we're live, and we are the Tyre Kickers. So yes, welcome. We're here in the podcast lounge with a live audience. At least I think they're alive.
Oh yeah,
that's not bad. It's not a bad setup. We've got a sofa, a large podcast sign, and a view of the whole show. We're perched here in the corner of Hall 3A, somewhere near the bins at the back, past all the traders selling bolts and Swarfiga and all that sort of other stuff. And joining me on the sofa, star of Salvage Hunters Classic Cars and Manor Park Classics, ladies and gentlemen, give it up at short notice for Paul Cowland.
Whoa!
He stepped in because our co-host Max has pulled a sickie. He's got the worst disease known to a middle-aged man, which is man flu. He's currently lying in bed with some lockets and a copy of Exchange and Mart, trying to find an old Allegro, I think. But
that's worse than childbirth, isn't it? Man flu. All the men in the audience know. Worse than childbirth. The worst.
Exactly. So how are you and how's the show?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a bit manic. I'm literally running around here, then everywhere, sort of stages, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. But I love the show, and it just seems to get busier and better every single year.
Well, yeah, it's a big show, isn't it? 40th anniversary, 3,000 cars, 338 clubs, over 350 traders, and a lot of grey-haired people, including me, wearing car T-shirts. But actually, it's not. The demographic's a bit younger this year, actually.
I know, it's good, and we must encourage the youth, as I'm going to call them. We've got to encourage the youth into it. And it's nice to see, actually, if you look at the auction results, I don't know if you just saw at Iconic have got a live auction happening as we speak. Ford Escort Cosworth with no mileage on. Did you see what that car just sold for?
Oh, go on, it's depressing.
Go on, have a guess. Does anyone want to guess if they didn't see? Ford Escort Cosworth, I think he's done 2,000 miles.
Shout it out.
Go on, have a guess. 65, 70 grand. Any advance on 70 grand? We'll have another auction here. 80. Right, people are saying some very sensible numbers. That car just sold for £180,000 plus bits, which means it's about £202,000 in total, which is just crazy. So if you want to talk about, where's the industry going? 90s cars are the hot ticket. Get a 90s car.
Wow, okay, so we're going to talk auction prices because they are all over the shop. We'll get to that later. Lots to talk about. So let's prod the pedal and get started. This is the Tyre Kickers, live from the NEC. So first up, See It, Want It. This is where we talk about a car that we didn't really notice much before, but we're now a bit obsessed with. And this time it's the turn of the Jag that's always been a bit of a drag, the XJS. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Wash your mouth out. It's never been a drag.
Well, it's been the ugly duckling car for decades. It has. It's the car you walk past at the auctions. But now, Max and I saw one going at an auction down in Poole recently. And they went for about 14,000, but it was beautiful. Convertible, absolutely stunning. Now, I've sort of walked past these before and thought, too expensive. But I think it's time's come because it stopped looking ugly. It started looking quite pretty.
Well, I don't think it's ever looked ugly. And I would be slightly biased because I actually have one. So I have a pre-HE, which is the very, very first one, which makes you laugh because when they say pre-HE, they imply that the HE, which stood for high efficiency, was highly efficient, which it really wasn't because it was a V12 that does about 20-something to the gallon. But I think they're a really pretty car because they're designed by Malcolm Sayers. Well, he nearly finished it before he died. And I think they're a very beautiful car. I've always loved them since I was a kid and I used to watch The Saint, who had one. And the only thing that the XJS is guilty of is the fact that it wasn't the E-Type. And that is like going on after The Who, isn't it, or Metallica, and trying to basically follow that act. It's impossible.
But it's one of those cars that's great until you go and lift the bonnet up, and then you go, my God, I'm not going anywhere near that. It's got big bills.
Could do. Well, the V12, yeah, but don't forget they did a 3.6 as well. And the 3.6, particularly as a manual, is actually a really lovely little car. Quite cheap to buy, very cheap to run, because that 3.6 six-cylinder is actually a mega engine. So I think I'm here to advocate for the XJS. And also, if you think about it, massively undervalued for what it is, because think of any other car that has that level of homologation. Because most cars, if they have some kind of competition credibility, they are normally attracting a massive premium. And that car, with Walkinshaw, won the European Touring Car Championship. And not many cars that have that kind of title under the belt. Think if that was any M product, any AMG product, any Volvo product, they command a huge premium. It's a coupe car with a genuine competition history, a V12 engine. If that thing was Italian, it would be 50, 60, 70 grand all day long.
So hold that thought, because earlier I swung over to the XJS Club over in Hall 2. It took me about 20 minutes to get there. They've got the cars there, and I went out to chat to the guys in the club, and I spoke to 3 fanboys over there, Ian, Richard and Simon. This is what they had to say.
Oh, it's a beautiful car. You have to remember that back in the day in the 1960s with Malcolm Sayer, the aeronautical engineer who designed these, the buttresses and the frontal area is all done calculated manually. It's always, in my eyes, been a beautiful car. I grew up, my best friend's father was a director. He had a brand new one in 1987, fully loaded, and you got inside of that thing, and the smell of the leather, the woodwork veneer, it's just an absolutely beautiful car, and I've adored them ever since.
They were always seen as flash cars back in the 80s, but they got a bad rap after that. What happened?
I think really it's the XJS is the new E-Type in terms of demographic, really, because the guys that are buying these cars, I restore them with a business partner, and we're seeing 55-something-year-olds with a passion, not for E-Types anymore, but they want the XJS because it's what they remember. It's the Simon Templar back in the 70s there when it came out. We all remember that. But we grew up with it, and it's the car that we love.
We've just had Halloween, Ian, but I've always thought these were quite scary in terms of running them. Is that
Very
true?
Yeah, I think I've got a V12 actually. This is mine, my red one over here. And I must admit, I'll be totally honest, the XJS was never something that really struck me. It was the V12 engine. So I got to that time in life 12 years ago and thought I need something with a V12 engine in. I had too many gin and tonics and I bought one on eBay.
We've all been there.
And I went and picked it up from Lincoln, and then I fell in love with it. That was an 88 coupe with the buttresses. Obviously the convertible doesn't have that. I'm not mechanically minded at all in any way, and I've done bits on this. I've changed the belts on the V12. I think the problem is, you can see from the engine that's behind his ears, which doesn't work well on a podcast, but it's well rammed in, and I think the problem is they're designed to be put together on a production line. So afterwards, trying to change anything is a bit of a challenge. But no, it's not as scary as it looks, really. And to me, the V12 is the ultimate engine. It's the best part of the car, really.
Yeah, is this a V12 we're looking at here?
Yes,
yeah, it is.
V12.
Now, see, that's quite scary to me, and I think I have looked at XJSs in the past and thought this is really nice, as you say, the interior is sumptuous, and then you pop the bonnet up and you go, oh my God, I don't want to be paying for that.
I think a lot of the bad press for the V12s are the ones that haven't been looked after.
Sure.
So there's plenty of horror stories on the internet. Oh, my car overheated in traffic, or I can't work on these. And I think some of that is just scaremongering.
Right, quick fire round here for all of you guys. Lean in. Right, what's the best things about owning an XJS?
Driving experience for mine.
The versatility of the car, it's a tourer and a sports car in one.
Yeah, V12 for me, all day long. It's all about the engine. And that makes you forget about the ungalvanised steel panels that rock back to the earth faster than a can on a beach.
Well, let's get into the maybe negative things. I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you might be filling up at a petrol station.
Oh, did that already.
Are they a bit thirsty, girls?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, there are variants that are even more thirsty. So this one here, one of mine is a Lister, which was an aftermarket modifier. I'm lucky if you get 10 miles a gallon out of that. The same with sort of Hyper Sports, which are another aftermarket.
Right.
So yeah, it is a thirsty beast, but fun.
Yeah, it's a Shell V-Power. You know, I joke with the cashier, can I pay you in 12 easy instalments? But to be honest, I'm not doing a big mileage in it. My example, for example, would do maybe 750 miles a year. It would be events like this, special occasions. So you really value and appreciate that experience. I've even taken mine on track. So the MPG will really plummet. But you don't buy a V12 on an 850cc mini budget. It is what it is, and you make no apology for that.
So the guys from the XJS Club there, give them a look. Sounds like a great club. We had a good laugh with them, and we'll try and run a longer interview out with them as well in future days. Coming back to Paul, we're back here in the podcast lounge. Is it a bit dangerous to dabble with an XJS, though? I see not only big bills, just to fill the flipping thing up, it's going to cost you a fortune, isn't it?
It's true, but I think petrol's actually got cheaper in the last few months, actually. It's gone down about 10p a litre.
Well, that's a good job if you're an XJS owner. You need a petrol tanker behind you, don't you?
But you do. I mean, they're not very good on fuel. Again, if you have the 3.6, and I had one for a bit, 3.6 manual will do 30-something to the gallon. A V12 pre-HE will do 20-something to the gallon. They're not great, but if you think how often you're going to use it realistically, what you might do, I don't know, 2,000 miles a year, 1,500 miles a year, it doesn't really matter. That's the whole point.
Well, give us some prices then. If somebody wants to get into them, what's your best pick for an XJS?
Like I said, I would try and get a 3.6. You struggle to get a manual. They're quite a rare old bus. Just get yourself a lovely little 3.6 auto. They're quite prevalent. 5, 6, maybe 7k would get you quite a decent one without too much bodywork to do. The bills are going to be tiny because it's just the little 3.6 out the XJ. You could run that car almost as a daily. I wouldn't run it in the winter because they don't like the salt very much. But that is a car that you could use all the time, have all the fun with. They look just as nice as the V12. But then the V12, if you get a good one, my word, that's just such a beautiful way to waft. And when you sit in a V12, even the early one, the 5.3, you just feel very, very special. And I think they're just so pretty. I will sit here and defend them to the hilt.
Well, you're listening to the Tyre Kickers. We are live here at the NEC Classic Motor Show in Hall. I'm confused where it is. It's so massive. I'm with Hall 5. Thank you, Alex. With Alex Kirsten from AutoAlex. Alex, you must be bringing the average age down here quite significantly, aren't you?
Thank you very much, but I am actually quite old myself. I'm nearly 40, so...
That's still bringing it down.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. The average age is a little bit older, but yeah, there's lots of young faces, my generation and younger, so it's just really nice to see that younger people are getting into the old tap that we really like.
Exactly. Well, I'm being a bit disingenuous because there are quite a few younger people around. I mean, you've got some modern stuff here, MX-5s, which we call modern classics on our show, but what is a classic to you?
A classic to me is something that I don't really want to drive. I think, 70s, up to probably like 82, I would say for me is a classic. Anything later than that is a modern classic, which is what I really, really love. So, the older stuff, not really for me. But yeah, I'm just going to group in modern classics into what we love here at the NEC.
So we're not going to see you in like a Spitfire or a Stag or something?
We are not. No. I go for the modern version of that.
What's wrong with breaking down?
No, I just enjoy driving, and you can't really do that in a Spitfire that much.
Now, obviously, you're very popular on YouTube. Part of your attractions, you're bringing people into this, sort of industry, this whole thing. Is that part of why you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love anything old, high mileage, and I just love showing it off on YouTube and going on adventures and inspiring people to buy the older, cheaper stuff, recycle cars, and just make memories. That's what I'm about.
And just briefly, what do you make of the show this year? It's quite big, isn't it?
It is really big, yeah. So I actually flew in from Vegas yesterday, so I haven't actually seen much.
Do you know where you are? You're where you are?
Yes, good to meet you. My name's Shmee150. No, but it's great. Really, really busy. Feels like it's busier today than it was last year. So ticket sales clearly quite good.
Well, welcome back to the Podcast Lounge. You're listening to the Tyre Kickers from the NEC. Let's get some of your comments from the last show now. Plenty of reaction on Instagram to the old man Rover debate. Paul, this is where Max was arguing that a Rover P6 would make a great daily. I, on the other hand, though, think it's just a bit dreary, a bit old man's car.
What? We're going to fall out, me and you.
I had a physics teacher with one of these, and he was a fusty old guy, and that's just done it for me on that car. You get in, it's just too 60s velour seats.
That car won Car of the Year upon its launch, I'll have you know.
Well, that was a long time ago, but you're wrong.
Can I just say, who is the hardest man in British cinema? Guy Ritchie. Who does he cast when he's looking for the hard man in one of his films? Who does he cast?
Is it you?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
But nearly as hard as that is Vinnie Jones. What did he put Vinnie Jones in one of his most famous films?
I'm guessing it was a P6.
It was a P6.
Okay, all right.
So when you're trying to define the epitome of British cool, gangster cool, and hard man cool, you put the main character, Vinnie Jones, the hardest man in British cinema, in a P6. And Guy Ritchie knows cars. That just tells you, to me, you can't say that car is not cool. You can't.
Yeah, well, I can. And some people on the internet agree with me. So this is Alan74 on Instagram. Said it's a granddad car. He says, I'm 50 and it's way too old man for me. Boy Gould 2020 says, huge thirst for the V8. It's a good motor. Lambretta Man 6 says, super cool, always was. Agreeing with you there, Paul. 350 Munro says, my uncle had a blue one. I thought back then it was a bit of an old man's car, but I'd love one today. And finally, Nightfall Drive says, I've experienced one flat out. in the Pyrenees, and it was shockingly good and sounded awesome. I think that was the V8 one.
But even the 2200 TC is an amazing little car. They're so good.
No.
And also, you know, the construction of that car is like a Citroen DS. So basically, you've got a skeleton, and every panel on the car is unstressed. So you can unbolt the entire car, including the roof panel. So any repair you want to make, you just unbolt. It's got a Dion back end, which is very trick. That car is proper. And then you can get a nice one for $6 or $7 grand.
Yeah.
Massively underrated classic. Brilliant to drive. Great styling. And you can buy with a V8.
I'm not even going to my funeral in that, thanks very much. We always love hearing your views. Get involved in our socials. We're the Tyre Kickers on Facebook, 3 separate words, and the Tyre Kickers UK on Instagram. So drop us a comment and we'll give you a mention on a future show.
Make sure if you're a Rover P6 owner or an XJS owner that you're dropping hate. Drop hate. Although, you know, the algorithm, a hate comment is as good as a comment, isn't it? Doesn't matter. It's just all good for the algorithm.
We've come over to hall, where are we? Hall number 2 now. We're at the iconic auctioneers area where they've got all these beautiful cars up for auction. Some beautiful stuff here. Just seen a Maserati blue over tan convertible, beautiful. Oh, what's this? A Ferrari 250 lookalike. A really nice one actually, tribute car. Max would hate that. But let's talk about auction prices because they are all over the shop at the moment. We've seen stuff for going well under and stuff for going well over as well at the moment in auctions all around the country. So let's get into it. Let's kick the tyres on the prices, find out what's going on. Back to the podcast lounge. Let's get into it. We watch the auctions pretty closely, but Paul here is right in the action, fronting the Manor Park Classic sales in person and with his great previews on YouTube as well. Give them a look. But it's fair to say, Paul, prices are all over the shop at the moment. So you know, what should we be looking for? Some people are holding on to their money, but if you've got a bit to spend, what do you go after?
Depends what you're after. I mean, what's nice at the moment is stuff is softening. So things like 30s cars, 40s, 50s, and even early 60s stuff. If you fancy anything in that price band, now is the time to buy. Because particularly the pre-war stuff, you can buy an absolutely beautiful car. We had a Graham Page Coupe, which is worth a little Google. Something that looks like you could take it to Pebble Beach, something that looks like an old gangster car from the late 30s. That was £6,000. The kind of thing that was probably £30,000 maybe 10 years ago. So they're starting to get incredibly good value for money. And they are very usable, very stylish, very cool classics. So I'd say if you want anything pre-war, now is a very good time to buy that. What's interesting is stuff that was fetching monster money like E-Types. E-Types were significant six-figure cars not very long ago. You could probably buy one of the nicest E-Types in the world, unless you're looking at something really early like a Series 1 or an OBL, for well under 100 grand now.
They're not going to probably go any lower than this, are they?
I think they will, for the simple reason
so?
being
No.
it's just the age of the audience. Because the thing is, if you want a nice E-Type...
Are you looking at me? No, that's right. How rude.
So if you look at the ownership profile, everybody who wants a nice E-Type, generally speaking, has got one. And those people are in their late 50s, early 60s, even into their 70s. And actually, the younger crowd isn't that interesting. What's really interesting, I was at Jaguar Classic the other day, and actually, the car that they're now starting to look at is the XJS, because obviously it means more to them. The cars that we are attracted to as enthusiasts are the cars that have some kind of social resonance, some kind of pop culture resonance. So it's the cars that we saw in films, on TVs growing up, that we wanted to own. And for guys of our age, I'm 51 now, it probably wasn't the E-Type. It was probably the XJS. And what's really interesting, there's a very talented designer called the Kaiser who does digital rendering. Check him out. And he's actually got into bed with Magnus Walker, and they have revamped TWR. They're bringing the brand back. And the car that they've chosen to bring that brand back with is the XJS, believe it or not.
So what else? On this podcast, we're interested in stuff that you can get make your money go further.
Yeah.
What else should we be looking at? I mean, what are the bargains out there? I saw a Sunbeam Alpine go, and they don't go for top money. But normally, a good one goes for 15, 16, 17 on a good summer's day, if the market's right. I saw an absolute peach go for 7,000, including the hammer fees the other day. I mean, is it that sort of stuff? Is it 60s?
Yeah, well,
Stuff like Stags and stuff don't seem to be softening that much.
No, Stags are cheap. Stags are cheap. Buy them in the winter now. Stags are cheaper. Sunbeam Alpines are cheaper, and of course that's a very cool car to own because it's the first Bond car, isn't it? Dr. No, Sunbeam Alpine. Mm-hmm. They're very good value, and I think they're a little bit more interesting than an MG because they're a bit rarer, a bit more unusual, but no less fun. So like I say, anything 60s, if you want a Mark II Cortina, unless it's something really exotic like a two-door or it's a 1600E, but even they're getting a bit cheaper.
And where are the bargains? Because I think the bargains are at the auctions, because the dealers have got stock, they've got to get their money back on it. You know, like places like Manor Park are probably the places to look and keep an eye out for stuff. Do you agree or not?
Can do. I mean, certainly there are stuff that goes through that's cheap, but then again, there's cars that go through for all the money. And the thing about the auction format compared to, I mean, we've seen it today with Iconic here at the NEC. You know, those guys are technically our competitors, but we want them to do well, because if auction houses do well, if every auction house does well, it raises the value of the auction process. So today they've, as we said at the top of the piece, they've done a Ford Escort today for an enormous amount of money, over £200,000 with fees on top. So auctions can actually fetch more money than retail environments. So had that Escort been in a showroom, there is no way it would have made 200 grand.
That's probably going to the Middle East or somewhere, isn't it? In a collection. It's not an everyman classic, is it?
Well, it kind of is. That's the thing. The Escort Cosworth almost is the epitome of the everyman classic.
That'll never get driven, I don't think.
It won't, and that's the sad thing. It's going into a collection. But the thing about auctions is, for the right car, and what we're noticing in the auctions now, really incredible, historied, rare spec, desirable cars, particularly from the 90s and noughties, are fetching way over retail at auctions. The stuff that's bargainous at auctions, and there are some bargains to be had, are the things that need a little bit of work, are the things from the 50s, 60s and 70s, because that audience is gently diminishing, and therefore less people want the cars, whereas the 90s and noughties cars, people are fighting for them.
Give the audience here some of your intel. Like, you know, there's got to be a point for them coming here, because the podcast.
It's not entertainment.
It wasn't a podcast.
It's not entertainment or humour, is it, guys?
Give us your shopping list of cars. If these guys have 10 grand to go and spend now, give us 5 cars we can buy right now.
I'd buy some kind of Volkswagen Golf for 10 grand. You'd probably get a very nice Mark II GTI for 10 grand. You could probably just grab maybe an Impreza needing a little bit of work. I think Subaru Imprezas have got to go up. Again, look at cars that are in that canon that are worth a lot more money. So there's now an Impreza that you can buy brand new, a classic GC8 Impreza from ProDrive, the P25, for over £500,000. So if that's the top of the market, and also 22B prices are £500,000. So suddenly when you look at a classic Impreza, that seems very, very cheap, and that can't last, because it's always the next one down that comes up. So I'd grab yourself a cheap Impreza while you still can.
Okay, I'm going to do this a slightly different way.
Go on.
Give us your shopping list of best buys at the moment. I'm going to take you through the decades, all right? And you've got to name one car, okay? This is because the market is flat. Work on that basis.
But it isn't, as we've seen today. The market is flat in certain areas, and in other areas it's outrageously buoyant.
I won't argue with you. You're the expert. Yeah. Okay, 60s. What's the best buy at the moment?
I would buy probably Cortina. I'd probably buy a nice Ford Cortina Mark II. 10 grand would probably buy you quite a nice one. I think they're quite cheap at the moment.
70s.
70s, I would probably buy, do you know what? I would buy an XJS.
No, you're not allowed to say XJS. We've bought them enough with XJSs. Come on, you've got to pick something else. Do you know what?
I would probably buy, though, actually, there's one on the Jaguar stand today. You'd probably get an all right one. I would buy a Jaguar XJ, actually. Okay. Because the 70s XJ, I think, is a very pretty car.
Or an XJC. That's a bit more money.
I don't think you get one for 10 grand, though. I think you get an all right Series 1 XJ. All right.
You can smoke around on that in a daily. As a daily.
Yeah, well, I do. Actually, my daily at the moment is an XJ8, which is the V8 XJ.
Nice. Okay. Into the 80s, then.
80s is good. Now, the thing about 80s, it's getting hot. Everybody wants 80s stuff. I would probably buy something Japanese. I would try and get, if I could, probably something like a Celica from that era. Something, again, a little bit of rally heritage, coupe, very usable. You'd probably still grab a late 80s pop-up Celica for about 10.
Okay. And what about the worst decade for car design, the 90s?
But you say that.
Oh, it was bloody awful.
It wasn't, though, because there's some amazing cars coming along. Things like the Vauxhall Calibra. We sold a beautiful DTM Calibra at Manor Park the other day. Now, that was particularly nice, 40,000 miles, white, all the Ermshire bits on it. That went for 11 grand plus commission. But had that not been a DTM, you could get a minty mint Calibra, and I would recommend that. So I've got a red top Calibra with a Ryger kit on it. I think I paid 2 grand for that. So you get the nicest Calibra in the world. 90s cars are the sweet spot at the moment. Everybody wants them. I guarantee that's where the money is to be made. And also, you can daily drive a 90s car. So my XJ is a 97. I am daily in that car every single day with a V8. And it's glorious. I've got airbag, I've got trip computer, I've got cruise control, I've got electric seats. So it's like driving a modern car, but you've got a lot more style and no depreciation.
Yeah, good point. And finally, the decade when every car was silver, the 2000s. What would you get? What would you get from the 2000s?
Probably for 10 grand by yourself. You'd have to probably get a convertible, and you'd have to probably get an SMG. Try and find yourself an inexpensive E46 M3. For that, you'd be buying a high mileage SMG cab. But that, to me, one of the greatest cars of the noughties, M3 cab, E46.
Should we have some fun with him? I'm going to do that again. You're going to give me a car that you won't buy from each decade.
Yeah, but you're asking the wrong guy. I would buy anything.
Yeah, there's got to be some cars.
Literally, there is
What's the worst?
Sam's there, my mate Sam's there. She's laughing.
What's the worst car from the 60s?
She knows that I would. This is the thing. I mean, the definition of worst, people, because I do these auction walk rounds at Manor Park, and I am unerringly positive about every car on there. You read the comments on. But people say that. Things I wouldn't be, because I'm quite honest. If a car needs paint or it has rectification, I will jump in and say it. But the thing is, I can find something nice to say about any car, not because I'm trying to sell it, but genuinely, there is not a car made that I can't find something nice to talk about, because to me, every car has a positive. And also, I like the quirks. So I was fortunate enough to do the London to Brighton run last weekend. I'm driving a 1901 Wolseley, which is not an easy car to drive. And I think most modern drivers would say wasn't a nice car to drive. But for me, learning all those foibles, learning all those quirks, learning how to do the gear shift, the change, which is completely alien to anyone that drove a modern car, that's the fun for me.
But I think it's great that you get to drive your first car that you learnt in again. That's really really nice for you, isn't it? But no, cool. Thank you very much for that. There's obviously some bargains to be had, but the market's all over the place. So when's the next Manor Park sale? Do you want to give that a plug?
Oh, bless you. Very kind. Yeah, December the 8th and 9th up at Manor Park in Runcorn in Cheshire. We'll have everything there. We'll have no reserve cars. If you've got £1,000 to spend, if you've got 101 grand to spend, probably got a car for you.
So that's about your lot. Thank you for listening. And in the case of the 3.5 people in the audience, thank you for watching this special edition of the Tyre Kickers. Cheers again to my special guest, Paul Cowland. Check out Manor Park Classics on their socials and on YouTube. You can check out our socials as well and get involved in the show. On Instagram, we are the Tyre Kickers UK, or on Facebook, the Tyre Kickers, 3 separate words. Max and I are back with another episode very soon, but for now, like they say on Question Time from the NEC, it's good night.